I think we are live. I think we are live.
Okay.
Hey all, good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining. So this is our meetup group, .NET Learners House, and we are conducting 2 events every month. All are virtual events, mostly at this point of time. So one event will be on first week of every month, and one event will be on third week of every month. So there are few upcoming events. We have half day of Azure and Microsoft Ignite local and Web API, Blazor, WASM, Azure, Angular, and React, and EF Core. Few other events has been pipeline, and today we have 3 speakers. We have Dominic Piper, who's talking on Angular, and Renuka, she's speaking on Azure, and I will be speaking on uh, .NET Web API. Okay, so now the first session is Renuka. She's a principal software engineer at Itron, and she has got pretty much very good experience. She's she's architect from Azure, and she's got pretty good experience, vast experience in Azure. Back to you, Renuka.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Swami. My screen is. You can see my screen, right?
Yes,
Swami?
yes, it's visible.
Okay. So hello all. Good afternoon. So I'm Renuka. I'm working as principal software engineer at Itron. I started working with Microsoft technologies from beginning of my career, and then moved into Microsoft Azure around 2013 to 2014. So overall, 8 years in Microsoft Azure. I'm working on Microsoft Azure technologies. So I worked with Azure Service Management and then Azure Resource Management. So from the classic to the new resource management model when Azure moved. So with that experience, today I've decided to speak about Azure Governance. Let me start the presentation. So first, let us look into what is governance is about. Why do we need a governance? So the people who have worked with Microsoft Azure, who have been working with Microsoft Azure for quite some time, can understand how difficult there was no option in Microsoft Azure to view. We all work for an organization, and in an organization there are multiple projects or products which will be deployed into Azure. So each of the product requires a set of resources for their services to work. So like this, each team will start deploying the resources into Azure, and which leads to the consumption of the resources. And as an organization, we have to follow certain standards. There are standards, security standards, and there are country-specific policies that we need to follow. And the governance team will constantly be monitoring the resources, what we are doing, and how the resources are supposed to be. So this and all are adds in burden to the development teams. In order to deliver the product, we will be only focusing on software development. We may not be able to look into other aspects of it. So if it is given, these things are given built in from Microsoft Azure, then we don't have to spend additional development or automation effort in order to ensure the resources are secured. That means there are no public IP addresses. So since everything is in a cloud, right? So anyone can connect. It is easier for the hackers to hack the machine if they are exposed with a public IP address. And if there are weak passwords, anyone can crack the passwords and log into the machine. So how do we know that as I mentioned, there are multiple teams, right? It is hard even for the governance team to identify which are all such machines which are not having these not meeting these security guidelines or not meeting set of policies which organization expects to be. So how can we identify such things? So in our considering these things, so Azure has come up with a governance services. So let us look into what governance services Azure provides and how are they helping, how we can create them and utilize them. So as I mentioned, governance as a definition, it helps for monitoring and managing the resources, and then it also helps to meet the organization goals and then the requirements. So governance is provided in Microsoft Azure in two ways: role-based access control, in short, it is called RBAC, and then Azure policies. So we can, these two are two sides of a coin, which is helping in order to organizations or the customers whoever uses Microsoft Azure to meet the standards that are expected to be followed by software companies. Moving on to Azure Governance Services. So Azure Governance Services, as I mentioned, governance is just not one step. It has multiple phases. So we have to define a set of policies to tell. We have been using the resources in Azure. It is just not today we started using, right? So the products are companies who have been using resources in Azure. So we have to see how much of those resources are meeting the requirements or the standards that are expected to be. And then the other aspect is from now on, whatever is going to resources that we are creating, how can it be achieved? So these two things need to be addressed as well. So for that reason, Azure has provided a set of policy. So as we know, right, policy has got a set of rules and guidelines, and you have to implement those policies. And then when you start implementing the policies, you see them how much of they are helping us or benefiting for the organization. And then we also can see the resources, how they have been utilized or what kind of resources using resource graph, and cost management, blueprints, and group management. These are the governance services provided by Microsoft Azure. So let us start now looking into what an Azure policy is about. I'll come back to governance architecture in few minutes. So I'm moving on to Azure policy now. So what exactly a policy is? As we know, right, every government comes up with their policies as part of the election process. So here, it is in our software industry. We are using Azure Cloud. So Azure also has come up with a set of policies, or you can also define your policy. So what exactly policy is? Policy is about having a set of rules or guidelines, and which helps us to achieve a specific goal. So it has a definition. Policy has a definition. So policy definition consists of a condition. And when you apply this policy on the Azure resources, it tells whether they are meeting or they are not meeting. So, and there are a set of policies can be grouped together. That's called a policy definition. So you can create a single policy, or you can group the policies together and make a policy definition as well. So then how does the policy look like? So it is a JSON representation. And when you apply the policy on a specific resource or at a subscription level, resource group level or at the subscription level, it tells which are all the resources meeting the criteria that you have defined in the policy definition and which are not meeting. So let me go into Microsoft Azure and tell you how to create the policy, and then how are we. So I'll be using in the demo, I'll be using the Azure Resource Manager templates, and then along with the PowerShell scripts to deploy these templates. So I'm using Azure AZ module. So you can do it with the .NET APIs are there, REST APIs you can use, or you can go with the script AZ module, everything you can use. So I will be using Azure PowerShell. So I have already imported AZ module. So the commands can be executed now. I'm not going to re-import the module. But before going to create the policy, I would go through the policy, how the policy will be created, what are all the parameters that we have to provide in a policy. So for now, first thing that I'm going to do is I wanted to create a storage account. So we all know, right, in a thread application, what we will be doing is we'll have a front-end web application and then a backend, and it is going to deal with raw data will be kept in the storage account, and then metadata will be kept in the SQL database. So when we are keeping the raw data, day by day, there is so much of space consumption that's happening, and there are different variations in the storage. There is a local redundant, is there geographically redundant, zone redundant, all these are there. So each of them comes with a cost. So my data, what that I am keeping is, it is okay in case of disaster occurs, even if I lose, that's fine. I have the metadata which I would be needing it, not the raw data. So in that case, I want to keep the cost low as well. So I would like to go for the local redundant storage account. But how can I control that? I'm saying I don't require the data, but I should be able to control it. I cannot always ensure that my team is only providing standard LRS. So there is a other aspect to it. Every month the budget is going beyond the plan, since many of us are creating the geographical redundant storage, and we are putting the data over there, which is because of the replication, there is a cost coming into it. So after identifying that storage is the cost creator, I have decided not to allow any geographically redundant storage account. How can I control that? Is by creating a policy definition. So a policy definition consists of, this is a policy rule. So a policy rule consists of an if and then. So this is basically logical condition that we have got. So as we know in part of the program, right, if the condition is met, then do this one. So the same thing here, if, and then all of, this is all of, all these combinations can be used. So what the condition is. So here I am saying Microsoft storage accounts. So this is nothing but the resource provider type. So I am saying Microsoft storage accounts is a resource provider for creating the storage accounts. So when anyone tries to create a storage account, it could be through portal or it could be through script of type Microsoft storage accounts. Then, and the SKU name, we know, right, while creating a storage account, there is a property called SKU name. So Microsoft storage account SKU name is a field in the storage resource creation. And if it is standard LRS, it has to be standard LRS. So I have put a negation here. That means not I have put here. So if it is not a standard LRS, then effect is deny the resource creation. So now I'm going to create the policy now. So my policy definition, policy rule is put in the JSON file. So I'm going to create a policy now. So I would say storage policy, and I have to give a, the command is new AZ policy definition. So the command is AZ policy definition, and I have to give a name for the policy. So I am saying, so you can give any name, but it has to be meaningful name. By looking at the policy definition, one has to understand what the policy is about. So I'm saying storage display name is required, right? So I'm saying only allow LRS storage accounts is the display name. And then I have to give the policy. So my policy is, I have defined in the JSON file as I showed you few seconds back. So I'm just giving the policy JSON as an input parameter. So now the policy got created. So when the policy got created, it will not get immediately applied on the resources. So we need to apply on the resource as well. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply this policy on a specific resource group. For that, you can create the resource however you want. I'm going to create a resource group. So I can apply on the resource group level so that it doesn't allow uh, any resources to create other than the this one. So my command now is I would say new Azure. So I'm creating a resource group. I'm giving a name. So storage LRS demo, and then location. I'm creating the location as a West US. You can create policies even specific to a subscription only or specific to resource group, specific to location. I don't want to give any tag for the resource, or let me give the tag. It's up to us how we want to uh, create the resource group, but it is a good practice to keep the tag. For now, I'm only providing the this one. So, okay, so my resource group creation failed. Storage disallowed by the policy definition. Okay, so for before the demo I had created, so let me stop the remove the policy so that I can show the demo. So I'm going to remove this policy assignment if it was done. So this is the tag policy, which is not allowing me to create the resource group because I did not provide. So this way you can see, right? I had created the policy where it was saying tag should be there for a resource. I did not provide the tag for the resource group, so it didn't allow me to create. So that way you can allow or stop the users by doing whatever the operation that you have expected not to do as an organization. Okay, so I have another policy as well, tag policy new, which was created for testing purpose. Let me go and remove the assignment of it. I'm searching by the tag policy. Okay, fine. Let me create the resource group here. So I will create a test group store. Give any name. Sorry, my caps is on. So I go to the tags now. I go to the tag and say okay, my resource group got created now since I gave the tag. I could have done through the script itself by giving a tag option. So now what I'm doing is I'm trying to get the context to the storage account so that I can apply this policy for that storage. So the command is getting -az resource group. So this is the name of resource group that I created now. Now my RG group has all the context to this resource group. We can see the one which we created now. Now I'm going to get the policy definition as well. So when I get the policy definition, so let me just copy here. So I get the policy definition. I gave a different name for my policy before. So it is storage LRS. It's fine. Okay, so I'm going to get the policy which I gave a few minutes back, which I created. Once I get the policy, I will be able to do the policy assignment. Let me just show you what my policy object contains of. So it is applied at the subscription, this subscription, and resource type is policy definition. That's a for each resource there is a resource type in Azure, and the name of it. Now I'm going to apply New AZ policy assignment. Okay. And I have to give a policy assignment so that it gets applied onto the that resource, whichever resource group that I have selected. Now I go and do storage LRS policy and scope of it. So I want at the resource group level, I want at the entire subscription level. I'm keep leaving the scope now. Let us see what happens. For now, I will only give the policy definition. So I got the policy definition detail by executing the command get policy definition. So now I'm going to set the scope. So scope is at the resource group level. Let me give at the resource group level. So I retrieve the resource group level to a variable, local variable, so which is called RG group. So I will give that as a parameter here. Missing subscription request did not have the subscription or a valid tenant level resource provider. Just give me a minute. Let me execute and see the policy I'm able to assign. Sorry. Okay, that's fine. So I have applied the policy now. So now the policy, storage policy is in place. Now let me go on to the portal now. I'll show you how. This is the tab where we can see the policies that are existing. So first I'll go to the definitions. So here we can see the policies that we have created. That is, they're called custom policies. The type here you see for the other policies as a built-in policy. So what exactly built-in policies? The ones which Microsoft is providing us to use so that we don't need to, if that is helping us for our requirement, we can use. If it is not meeting our purpose, then we have to go and customize the policy. So their custom policy. So let me go for my policy that I had created before. So storage policy. So if you see here, right, type is custom. And then let me take out this. You might have seen another option in the type, right? Definition. It is an initiative, and then and it could be a custom. And so what exactly policy, initiative, policy, definition type policy is a single policy, and its initiative is a group of policies. So now I have my policy. Let me do the assignment. So here it is saying definition location to which subscription it has been assigned. And you just see the 3 dots over here, you can do an assignment. But I did the assignment using the script, so I'm not going to do manually here. Let me go back to the portal again. If I go under the assignment section, you can see my storage policy which has been applied. So now how do I know whether the policy is working or not? So let me go and create a resource over here. So I just quickly go and try to create a storage account here. I don't want any storage account other than the LRS storage account, since I want to keep my cost low. So for that reason, I've applied a policy and kept. So if anyone tries to create a policy other than that, then it should deny it. So I'm going to put them into a demo group because I applied the rule on that demo group. So if you see here, I try to get the resource group, and while doing a policy assignment, I pass the resource ID of it. So now that's for the same reason I have created demo group. Now I'm going to choose an account which doesn't exist until now. So I'm doing a new resource creation. Demo LRS deny. Let me first try with the deny. So this is name is available. I can create it. I'm creating it in the West US. So I'm allowing only standard LRS. So I would like to create a premium, and let me see what happens. And I would go for a file storage. So that way, I'll not be allowed to create or block storage, anything that I can do. I wanted to go for a ZRS, so I'm just looking for an option of ZRS here. Maybe let me put into central US, because by the location of the resource as well, we will not get the, okay, let me go to North Europe. It's a premium. I'll choose the file storage. Okay, now I have the zone redundant storage here. So now let me try to create a storage account and see. I mean, since I am as an user, I am not aware whether the organization has applied the policy or not. I chose it. Now, when I try to create, it says validation failed. Click view to detail. So, what is the reason it failed? So, if you go into the summary, resource was disallowed by the policy. So that way, we can keep the resources or the operations that we are expecting the team members not to be done in our store subscriptions, that can be controlled by the policy, and you can keep the cost as a low as well by using the policy. So now let me go back to the policy. So this is one example that I showed to control the kind of resources that you can create. There are variant things that you can do with the policy. You can not allow resources which doesn't have the tag as well. So if you remember, I tried to create first resource without having the tag, resource group without having the tag. So it didn't allow me. Policy definition gets executed whenever you try to create a new resource. Then what will happen to the existing resource? So now let me go back to my policy again. To show the how the policies works, I had created a storage account which does not meet this requirement. So they got executed every day. There is a 24 every 24 hours once the policies will be executed on the resource. So it will list the resources that are compliant and non-compliant as well. So if you see here, there are list of resources that are non-compliant. So let me go to the storage policy over here. This is the policy that I had created. So now if you see here, right, one resource is a compliant resource and zero are not compliant resource. And then there is an option called exempt. So what exempt does is, exempt will allow you to exempt the resources which you don't want this policy to be executed. So that way, if you know there are few resources you want to exempt, or on few resource groups you want to execute. Say suppose you want all your team members only to create a resources for their learning purpose or for the prototype purpose in a specific resource group, you can exempt that resource group. So that way the policy doesn't get executed on that resource group. And if you see here, there are non-compliant. So if I just go here, right? So let me go here to the storage account. This is a non-compliant. So why the storage account is a non-compliant? If I just go into the action, right? So what it says is it is a standard LRS storage account. And sorry, let me go back to resource now. Yeah. So if I just go to compliance reason, right, in the details, I'll be able to see why the resource become a non-compliant as well. So if you see reason for non-compliance, current value must not be equal to target value. So here my target value was standard LRS, but the current value is premium ZRS. So for that reason, the storage account is a non-compliant. So you get to know, and then you can remediate for them. So let me go back here. So if you see here, right, so remediation is there. So you can remediate the resource which are non-compliant. You can have the remediation actions as well. So in the policy, you have a policy name and you have a description of the policy. Let me go to the policy rule for any of the policy rule. So you have got a name for the policy. You can have the condition, and you can have a description of the policy, and then there is a mode. So there is a mode called all, or you can change the mode as well based on the resource manager, or if it is getting applied then the resource provider property. So that's about the policy. Policies are executed and whenever a new resource is created. So first we need to create the policy. We have to assign the policy to a subscription or to a resource group, which as per your requirement. And after that, two things happen. It will run on a periodic basis. So that's on daily, and to list the resources until now which are existing in the scope that you have applied for the policy, and tells you which are non-compliant. And the another remediation is whenever you try to create a new resource, it will not allow because I have put an action deny. So you can change the actions according to your requirement. If you only want to do audit, you can also do the audit for the as part of the policy definition. Then the other service that is offered by Microsoft Azure is Azure Resource Graph. So Resource Graph basically tells you it is a graphical representation to see the resources as per your condition that you are asking to show the or list the resources. So let us go into the resource graph once and see how this resource graph works. I'm going back to the portal now. So if you see here, right, Resource Graph Explorer, you can write your own custom queries as per your requirement. So my custom query, I wanted to list the resource providers that are available in this subscription. So you can also control the resource creation by not registering the providers that you don't want to have. I wanted to know how many such providers are there. So what am I going to do is I'm going to execute the query here. So the query language is called Kusto queries. So this is very simple query. It is more or less like our SQL queries they look like. So what I want to do in a table of resources, you can equate it to a SQL query, select star from, and then you want what and all the attribute or the parameters that you want, and then you want to order by anything. You can write an order by class and where is a condition. So now I wanted to list the resources, whichever is matching this condition. I want a type and API version of the resource and ordered by the name assigning. So let me run this one. So if you see here, right, I wanted an API version and distinct resource type. I am doing it. So it is a Microsoft Insight meets this one, or storage accounts. All these are the resources that I have registered in my subscription. You can view them either in the text format or you can go to the chart. So there are three charts that are supported: map and bar and donut chart. So the data that I have produced doesn't support any of these types. So that's the reason we'll not be able to see them in the chart format. Now let me try to put them into this one. Let us see. I wanted to see how many resources of storage accounts are existing in my subscription. So for that reason, I have to provide the resource provider type. Provider type storage accounts. So in my all examples, I am taking storage account for today so that you can easily correlate what a resource provider is, what is a resource provider type and all. And where type is storage accounts. So let me run the query and see. So these are the storage accounts that I have got in my subscription as of now. So these are the storage accounts. So you can see them. What is the subscription, in which resource group they are, in which location they are created, what is the kind of a resource. So suppose your management wants to look into how many such resources are existing. Say suppose we have decided not to use a specific resource. So for example, SendGrid I don't want to use. It is not meeting some policies. I have decided not to use. Now, how do I know whether such a resource is existing or not? Is by going to the Resource Graph Explorer, and I can list the query based on the subscription. So this query, it is simple. Select. I just have to give the table name as resource, and then where type I'm writing. Where type is storage accounts. You can do multiple conditions as well, and conditions are also possible. All the details of a resource we can get in one shot. You can export them into a CSV file and later do the analysis. All these are possible. Who owns the resource, tax. It is like an entire history of the resource you can get by using the Resource Graph Explorer. So Kusto is very simple query language, easy to write the query. You have already built-in queries also. You just have to click on this one. You will get the whatever is required. So if you just click on it, it gets added into our query window. So moving on to the other services in the governance, what Microsoft Azure provides is another one is a cost management. So this is very important, right, for the management or for the entire organization. Like when we were outside of the cloud in the on-premises, to purchase every resource or to purchase any other software, there was a clear monitoring that was happening, or they were undergoing a clear evaluation process, and then why this resource, why this much of the server configuration, all this were questioned, and after scrutinization only it was allowed. Now everything is in the cloud, so you just have to go and create the resource whichever you want to have. And as part of prototype, when I'm doing, I may not be intentionally doing it, so no member may be intentionally doing it, but when I'm done with my prototype, I'll leave the resources. So for example, if I create a virtual machine with a premium hard disk then it has got a high configuration virtual machine with a 12 core or bigger than that. If I create, then definitely it will add a cost, right, which is simply running there, and there is a public IP associated with it, and all that I am done with my prototype, it is lying for months together, which is simply adding the cost to my company. Since it's running there, so Microsoft will definitely put a cost for them. So as an organization, how can I control that cost? So cost management is another service provided by Microsoft Azure in order to mitigate the cost, how much that you are going to utilize or going to produce the cost in this month, or how much of the cost that you have already produced by having the so and so resources in Microsoft Azure. Both can be done. So you can also mitigate it, and you can also remediate, and you also get to know how much of the cost that it has occurred by the resource. It will give you granular report, it give you. So that way you don't need to write any automation to know. So it is very easy. Go to the graph, predict, and then take a remediation if you do not require them. So that way you unnecessarily no need to pay for it. So how can we do that? So cost management is another service offered. Let me go into the cost management and billing. So here, if you see here, you can see the billing scope. Billing scope is in which subscription it is. So again, okay, you can do the cost analysis. Which resource will produce the cost in the form of graph, donut charts, it is provided. And you can go by from which date to which date you want. So you wanted a cost from last 30 days, you want a specific month in the quarter, last quarter, or if you want beyond that, you can do the customization also, custom range also you can do. Since this is my resources just I've created, since the cost has not occurred yet, so we are not able to see. You can get the billing invoice for the resources, so that for a specific subscription you can do, or at the management group level also you can do. You can keep an cost alert. Say suppose you want to know if more than $2,000 my resources consumption has occurred in specific subscription, I would like to get an alert. So you can create an alert over here and then tell what exactly that the alert is supposed to do. So since it's an alert, you just have to give a name and for which period and when you want, and you can put the budgeted amount. So once the threshold value crosses, you will get an, or about to reach, you will get the notifications. And there is an advisor recommendation as well. So you can get an advisor so recommendation where it says, say suppose you are not utilizing a virtual machine, though you have created very large scale virtual machine. There is no the services that you are hosted in that virtual machine not being used heavily. So in that case, you may not require a G-scale VM. So in that you can reduce to a lower scale configuration. So all this can be provided by the advisor. So this is another service that Microsoft governance service, cost management is another governance service. So before moving on to our last service for the in the governance, I would go through Azure ARM template. As I mentioned before, I'm going back to Azure Governance architecture. So this I have taken from Microsoft Azure portal. So if you see, this is an architecture of Azure Governance services. So you have Azure Blueprints. We have seen Azure Resource Graph until now. So Resource Graph is another service which will help you to view the resources based on the condition that you are writing in your Gusto query language. And then you also can see here policy engine. Policy, we created a policy, you can apply the policy and you can see how it policy allows or denies it, right? So policy engine is also part of the governance. So if you look into the blueprints, right? So blueprint is a combination of a policy definition and then access to the resource and then the template. So basically ARM templates, Azure Resource Manager templates are a JSON representation of a resource in Microsoft Azure. So what exactly JSON tells is how my resource is supposed to be, what kind of resource I want to create. Let me go into a sample JSON file. So this is my template for the storage. So if you see here, it has got a parameter section which tells what and all parameters required for to create a storage account and then what kind of resource it is. So I wanted to put this into a resource group. So this is my resource group section. And then this is a deployment. So what is it I'm doing it? I'm doing a storage deployment of type storage account. So here if you see, right, type of the resource storage/storage accounts, which I have been showing in other examples as well. Now, until the storage account is created, I cannot create, until resource group is created, I cannot create a storage account. So you can put the dependency between the resources. So why this depends on is very good it is very much useful. You can clearly define or you can clearly model your resource creation when one should get created. Without having a disk, I cannot create a virtual machine. So I would need to create a first disk. So you can put a depends on that. Until that resource is not created, the next one doesn't create. Even say suppose if I do not put the depends on, then my second resource creation will also fail. When I know without that it is not possible, I can simply achieve using the JSON file. Otherwise, I'll have to write a script around it to ensure that the resource is existing. If not, how much time I have to wait. So all these things are like too much of a programming that we will end up doing it. So by considering all the pain points, Microsoft has come up with this resource manager templates, which easily helps us for the resource provisioning. Going back to the Azure Governance architecture. So policy definitions can be put into a blueprint, resource manager templates, and role-based access. What exactly blueprint is helping me to do is when I create a resource, I wanted to ensure that my resource is meeting the goal. So I wanted to club these two things together. I don't want policy definition to be a separate thing, a norm template to be a separate thing, and then giving an access to a resource is separate one. So I wanted the all these are related ones, right? For a specific resource or a resource group. So blueprints help us to group these things which are required for a specific environment or for a subscription to club them together. Blueprints is helping. So blueprint is not a replacement of a Azure Resource Manager. Azure Resource Manager is meant for creating the resources by having a JSON notation in a descriptive way. You are telling what your resource is supposed to be. But blueprint, what it is doing, it is just one level above. If you see in this diagram, right, Azure Resource Manager, so these things are put in part of the blueprint. Okay. Now let us go and see how an resource ARM template, we have just seen how an ARM template looks like. Now let us create a blueprint and assign the blueprint and how an resource can be made part of the blueprint as well. Okay. So let me go back to my partial. So blueprint, again, blueprint has got a definition. I am representing my blueprint definition in a JSON format. It is just need not be for the resources that we'll be using. It will be for the governance services as well. Everything can be represented in the JSON format. So this is a JSON notation of my blueprint. So let us look into it. What exactly parameters it has got. So blueprint has got a blueprint name, which will help us uniquely identify the blueprint. And it has got a metadata. You can tell what this blueprint is going to do and all. You can write a parameters to it. So I have given a default value, so that gets applied. I'm just giving a new name so that it is not there. So my blueprint and the type of the resource. So if you had observed just before coming to blueprint, I was explaining about storage account, right? Microsoft.storage/storage accounts. So here the type. So every resource in Azure, whether they are meant for a management purpose, whether they are meant for the application utilization, they have got a clear type of the resource which helps for the uh, CRUD operations of the resources. So they expose APIs, you can use those APIs and perform the actions. And each resource type has got an API version. As we provide an API version for our application, so whenever you want to duplicate, you will provide a new API version, right? The same thing here. Each resource type for the operation that they are supported, there is an API version. So you wanted to add a new way of creating the resource, you can provide instead of stopping support for the previous ones, right? You will provide a new version of the API. So the presence of the API really helps for managing multiple versions of the APIs. And then the blueprint name as a parameter that I have passed, and what scope that I want to. This makes lot of difference. So target scope is a subscription here. So I wanted this blueprint to be applied at the subscription level. And then which are resource group, I'm just giving sample resource group name as this one. You can change it as well. So I'm passing the parameter resource group name here. Or you want to provide at the runtime. So you want one blueprint to be applied at multiple subscriptions or at multiple environments within the same subscription. That can also be done by parameterizing the template resource group name. So now I'm using this blueprint. Just before the demo, I messed up with my AZ module. So I will execute from my cloud shell over here. Let me copy the command from here. So the command is new AZ subscription deployment because these are common resources. They are not just at the resource group level. So you can see them. Since I am running from my Cloud Shell, this template should be accessible. So I have placed my template in the my storage account so that it is accessible from my Cloud Shell. So I made it as a public just for the demo purpose. It's a long time it will. Let me launch another one. So the command is new AG subscription deployment, and you have to give a name for the blueprint. So I'm giving a name. You go and check if this is existing. So in the blueprint, you can go and see the blueprint definitions and assign blueprint definition. Again, here there are standard blueprints available, or you can create your own blueprint as well. So you can do through portal or you can do through the script. So I'm going to do it through ARM template now. I am giving the name as blue deploy new. I'm just checking it. Is there anything available? There is nothing. So I go and execute the command so that it will. In the template, I have the name. So let me go back here. I'll remove this one so that with that name. Okay, since it's assigned, it doesn't allow me to remove it. And first, like if you want to clean up the blueprint, if you feel that this blueprint is no more useful, so first you have to unassign the blueprint and then remove the blueprint. You can modify. There is no need to delete all the time. Since it's a demo, I just wanted to show how the resource creation happens. So I created here. I deleted and now I'm going to create. So my blueprint got created. Name is blueprint name. So let me just go over here. Blueprint definitions. There were two until now. I should see my now. So it is, if you see here, the state is in the draft state. So and if you see changes are unpublished changes, yes, I haven't published this blueprint. So why this happen? Why this is, it is like this, right? Like I have a source control. I will create my own branch and I'll be working on my branch until I try to create a PR, it will not get mastered. So this is can be correlated with the same thing. I'm working on my branch. I don't want to make it public until my blueprint is complete. So that's the reason it is in the draft state. Now I have tested my blueprint. I'm sure that it will work. So I'm going to publish my blueprint so that it will be available for all. So I'm giving a version for this one. So blueprints are versioned. So that's another great advantage of the blueprint. Whenever you make the change, you can version the blueprint. That way it tells you what is the version of the blueprint that you are using. So I published the blueprint. Now in order to make it effective, I need to assign the blueprint. So I'm going to assign the blueprint. I just give a different name for it at the time of publishing. And this is a definition version. 1.0 is the definition version that I'm publishing, and the location of the blueprint is West US. and I would like to apply it. So now before applying it, it will tell me, it is asking me to provide a value for it. So I'm creating a resource group and then the location to it. So what am I doing is a test group. One name we need to give so that which helps us to create a resource. I'm creating in H2S. Now I assign it. So assignment, when you do the assignment, it is going to execute this blueprint. So as we know, right, like blueprint, when you go and ask for any uh, civil engineer, they will give a blueprint of the construction that you are asking. The same thing here. So blueprint is basically what my resources or what my deployment is supposed to look like. I'm defining all in that blueprint. Now, when I assign it, is the deployment of the blueprint is happening. That means resources are getting created. Since I had assigned the blueprint, let me go and see what is status of my blueprint. Okay. So now if you see provisioning state is in waiting state. Since it's getting executed, so it is in the waiting state. Now let us go inside the blueprint and see what happens, whether it will succeed or will it fail. I'm expecting that it will fail. The reason, let it fail. I'll show the log. If you see the status, current status is deploying. So the assignment got succeeded. If you see the resource group, this is the name that I had given. So I was expecting that it will fail because I had created one policy, but I deleted the policy in between. So that's the reason it succeeded. For my resource group, I did not give the tag. So I had created a previous policy. I was expecting that it would fail, but since I had in between deleted, it got passed now. So blueprint, my blueprint definition was containing a resource group creation, and I assigned it, so it got created in the ESTS. Okay, we can see the provisioning status. Now let me go back to my blueprint. Until now I had only blueprint for creating the resource group. Now I decided that I wanted to add some more resources to it. So my deployment consists of a storage account to keep the raw metadata and a web service and then the SQL database. So let me see how I can do. Now let me try to create a storage account as part of this blueprint. So if you see here, right, there is an artifact section to it. So if you see my artifact, one of the artifact was a resource group. That's why it got created. And artifact type. So there are 4 artifact types that blueprint supports: resource group, resource manager template, role assignment, and policy assignment. So for a deployment, you can do all these together using the blueprint. Now resource manager template. So resource manager template, I will go and choose a resource manager template. I have a resource manager template which I had shown before. So that's a storage account creation. You can provide a path to your source control management by to your blueprint as well. So since I have, for demo purpose, I am using locally. I have to give a new storage account I wanted to create as part of it. I will give a different name for the storage account, and I wanted to create a resource group location. So my resource group is in, let me go back here to blueprint. I don't remember which is the location that I had given. So let me take from. I would like to create here. There is no resource until now. So I would like to create from this one. So I am taking the resource group name from here. and it is in the East US. This is the location. You can modify the parameters as per your need. You can parameterize them by passing the parameters JSON file also. I would increase it to some 16 characters here. And storage name prefix, if anything is there. I don't have anything. Resource group name, parameters, and variables of storage name. So storage name. Okay, so this is not storage name. This is my resource group name, and my storage name is. So here it was getting constructed. I would do this way. I
Okay.
will give a name here. Hello. Yeah, Swami.
Okay, Renuka, time check, Renuka. So,
Yeah.
do you need 5 more minutes to wind it up, or?
Yeah, 5 more minutes for me. I'll be done. This is the
Okay.
last one.
Yeah, please go ahead.
I'm just giving a name for my storage account. Okay. So there should be a display name for the blueprint. I'm giving storage blueprint. I'm saving it as a draft now. Whenever you, it is not mandatory that you need to publish immediately. My blueprint is saved now. Okay, so there is an unpublished change again because I modified the blueprint. So I'm going to publish the blueprint again. And I have changes to it. So I want to increment the version. I'm incrementing the version and I'm publishing the template now. And again, I will assign back the blueprint so that it will execute the resource creation. Sorry. Resource group name. Yes. Okay, so these are the parameters. So it is giving me to provide the parameter. Yeah. So since I have assigned the blueprint, it will go and try to provision the resource with the resource that I added now. So I wanted to create a storage. So it is going and doing the blueprint assignment. That means resource provisioning is happening. So coming back to the presentation. So blueprint enables basically whoever is working towards designing the entire environment as per their project or product needs. It helps them to model the deployment so that you know what resources that you are creating and in which location they are creating, what kind of policies that you are applying, who can access, who cannot access. All this can be controlled using the blueprint. Yeah. That's all about the Azure Governance services. Swami, I have got any questions?
No questions, Renko. I just saw that there are no
Okay.
questions on the YouTube. So
Okay.
thank you so much. It was really wonderful, and we came to know about the usage and why do we need to use all those 4 items which you have discussed. Really appreciate your time. Thank you so much, Renuka. So what's your plan for the next month series? You can we'll post it in
I will, yeah, Swami.
we'll post it. Yeah, okay. Thank you so much. Thank you
Yeah.
so much, Renka.
Yeah,
And
thanks, Swami. Thanks for the
thanks.
opportunity.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you.
So let me introduce our next speaker. Next speaker is Dominic, and Dominic is from Germany. He is senior software at Consio, a software consulting company. And Dominic started working in Angular since Angular JS 1.x time, and he helps a lot of big companies to develop and architecture big growing applications. I welcome you, Dominic.
Thank you.
Let me. I have your screen is there. I will pull myself out, Dominic.
Mhm.
Show is yours. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, good morning, everyone. Um, my talk is about architecture for growing Angular applications.
Dominic, if you
I
don't mind, could you please speak a little bit louder?
uh,
I'm not able to hear you.
oh,
It was very.
sure, sorry.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, welcome everyone. My talk is about architecture for growing Angular applications. Um, that's me. I was already be introduced. You can find me on Twitter or LinkedIn if you want to. Um, the agenda for today was already posted in the meetup group. So let's jump into the first topic. Your application will age. What do I mean with that? This is a typically starter application, I would say, which you see in most tutorials and or how most Angular applications look after you first started to work with it. It have mostly in the beginning a really flat hierarchy. All components lay together in one folder. Mostly the services are grouped together in one folder named mostly services. This is good at the beginning, and if you just get comfortable with Angular or just started with Angular, but if the application tend to grow and get bigger, this is really hard to see the dependencies between the components or what of the services stick to which components. An example I usually take is I see often new developers with Angular which have experience, for example, in the backend, and someone who wrote a backend in Angular in Java or .NET wouldn't ever structure an application like this, lay all together in one folder and just run it. So how should we structure the Angular application, and why should we structure it not like this? Um, one of the bigger one of the big problems here is they are really mixed up everything you have from UI components to services to feature components. It's everything in one folder around all features or domains. Every kind of structural components like footer, header, menus, stuff like that. And you can't see except for the name which services stick with what components, which are combined in a domain. And the only possible structure Angular brings in is mostly the Angular modules, which only help you with visibility around your services or components. You have to construct your dependency tree through Z modules, but you can import every module everywhere to have your dependencies there, but you don't know exactly, should I do this there? And Angular don't have any built-in features to check things like that. So the first thing I would do with an application like this is break it down. So how do we break an application like that down? The application not changed yet. So what do we need to do? Let's combine all structural components like header, footer, all into one module. For example, here, application shell. The term shell is often used in this for the starting point of the application, where all of your application gets stick together, where routes are applied. Normally, the shell shouldn't have any domain logic, and just combine all the features to start your page. After that, bring in modules for your features. This application, for example, the example took from the book from Nawa, monorepo patterns, and the application is a simple application to do a flight, check in, book a seat, it's stuff like that. And everything you have for that application, I would combine into different modules, or if you want to try something like, for example, domain-driven design, there would be bounded contexts for the booking, for the seat map, for the check-in, and everything you need, for example, for the booking, you combine into that area. Adding every service you need for booking, every UI components. After that, you can have some shared space where you have, for example, UI components you use on multiple spaces, for example, modal components or sidebars, tabs, everything you usually use in more than one area, you can combine them into a shared module, or hopefully into more than one shared module. There are a lot of examples which then have one shared folder. In that shared folder is everything in what could be used on multiple pages or in multiple components, but normally not really structured. Everything you can share normally can be structured into different shared modules. For example, you have a shared security module where services in which you use to check your user role or check if he is allowed to access this or that component. And with that, you can just break down the big shared folder as well to give them some context. After you structured your modules into that, you can structure the internal of that module as well. Here is a simple example for the check-in module. The check-in module itself has its own shell, so that is the starting point for the check-in process. There's a feature library inside that, where all the logic, the business logic lives and is applied from the shell and stick together there. And the feature check-in uses the data access library, which just contains everything you need to access. You need to access some data. This can be a REST endpoint, a GraphQL endpoint, WebSocket endpoint. Everything you can get data from should be into that. One thing which is here not shown, usually depending on what your module contains, there can be a UI module which should host every component which just adds some UI without any logic. For example, if you have a static header, that can be in the UI module. Every component which is in there shouldn't contain logic and don't, for example, inject services or something like that. It shouldn't depend on logical components or logical or services which can apply logic. In the feature for what you can add there, for example, are every kind of services except the ones which get data from endpoints. Every smart components in that context means every component which applies some logic, do some filtering, stuff like that. Like I said, UI just dump components. The smart and dump component term is often used here, sometimes just as well as presentational and logical components. Yeah, and data access services, REST calls, WebSocket, queues, whatever you can get the data from. And the shell, the overlaying template of that page. This could be, for example, you have an application which start the check-in process. This application just starts the check-in shell, and from there, it doesn't do anything more than that. Okay, how do you or how do we structure that application? First side could be break it down into different libraries and distribute them with npm. This brings in some more complexity in our project. For example, you have to do some versioning on the different libraries. For example, just the check-in module I introduced have for that 3 libraries which you have to version, deploy, and every kind of distribution brings in here a long cycle to change anything. So you want to change something in the data access layer. You have to change it, do your code, do your tests, package the npm module and distribute it. After that, you have to set the versions in all of your dependencies and rebuild everything. That's a long life cycle for just change, for example, a small thing. And normally that isn't really fun to work with that. The other thing is that you would split up your repository into multiple repositories. It's really hard to maintain, see what is there, who works on what, and stick the whole application together in the end. If anything works really bad, it could be that some of your modules use different versions of the same library. For example, if they use some shared data access layer into multiple of your access layers, it could be that any single of them have another version, which lead into complications. So how can we do this? In the Angular world or front-end world, there's often the concept of a monorepo. So you have one repository which hosts all of your code. Anything you have from your application to your libraries into one big repository. For that are different toolings available. I will take a look here at NX from Narwhal. There are other technologies, for example, Learner or Jan workspaces can be used as well. I usually use NX because NX, for example, is based on the Angular CLI. It comes from the Angular world, so it's really easy to work with Angular there and use the features. NX itself brings in best practices for component and service generation or everything like that. Schematics, which are generator techniques. In the newer versions, it's called generators, which can generate from a single service up to a complex structure, for example, to bring in NGIX as a state management tooling. Everything like that can be in a schematic. The workspace itself can be extended with plugins, but that's not the topic for here. And you have Builder to build together your applications and migrations to help update your application to the next version, for example, of Angular. Here you see some a cut from the repository I created for this talk. It's just a simple NX workspace. On the left side, you see their apps repository, where apps folder where different apps are in, and a libs folder where the libraries live. Everything in one repository, so you don't have the problem with distribution yet. On the right side, you see the desktop application from Booking opened. You see the files there. That's just a regular Angular application. Just everything you generate normally with the Angular CLI, if you start a new application, is here in this one folder. So it don't introduce this completely new ways to develop the application, other than it just structures the repository itself a little bit. So with that, now we don't have the distribution problem and version conflict problem, because everything lives in this repository, and the version numbers itself are here not the libraries itself don't see the versions. It's everything the latest version used, which is in the repository, and you compile or distribute your application. Everything which at that point is inside of your repository is built into your application. There's some tooling from NX to generate, for example, the libraries itself. It's the same feature set the Angular CLI uses. You can just put ngg or generate a library, and just with the prefix of the package name, here, for example, in Narwhal Angular, you can run the library schematic and generate a new library, which is then simply generated into the libs folder, and you can use it. NX itself helps you after that to import your modules into other modules and to build your dependency graph for that. So this is the dependency graph, or you can how the application after it's broke down into modules could be like. It's for the different feature sets or different features, there are modules which, for example, here is check-in, seat map, and booking. These modules are itself just simple Angular libraries which depend on their own libraries, for example, check-in shell, check-in feature. And the tooling know how the dependency is and how which library imports the other libraries. And with that, you can just structure the application itself. I will show the repository in a few minutes. For here, the builder feature or the normal Angular build, if you build your application, works like usual. So you can just ng build your application name, and after that, the builder will collect all the libraries from the Mondo repo and compile them in. Another feature which you can use here, for example, is the affected commands, which are introduced by NX, which use the version control system like Git, and to find out which repositories or libraries you touched and just rebuild them and not the other applications and libraries. So that saves a little bit time or two more time. I saw repositories with more than 100 libraries and other with more than 100 applications. And with that, the applications, if you rebuild everything every time, it can take a long time. So this is a time saver if you just, for example, develop some feature into one library and don't want to touch everything else. So hopefully you're able to see my IDE. It's really small. Okay, here this is just the application I just showed the picture of. Here are the apps folder, which is, for example, have here booking and check-in areas with a desktop and mobile application in it, where the desktop and mobile application, for example, could be the desktop app is the normal web app you can serve with your PC or mobile phone. And the mobile application could be the mobile view of the application, or, for example, app developed with stuff like Ionic, for example, which uses Angular under the hood to develop mobile apps. Everything of that can live in here. And The applications itself shouldn't contain that much logic. Normally, they just import the shells they need to work and do nothing more. So it's easy to reuse the whole feature of different shells into one application. For example, here if you have open the booking app, I can take a look in the libs, and there's a booking shell. The booking shell then will be imported by the booking application, and from there the booking feature is developed just inside this area here. And everything the booking feature needs should be in there, except the few things that are shared. That the shared stuff can be, for example, in another module which you just import, but it's easier to hold everything you need for one feature just in one module. But right now for that, you can import everything everywhere, except if you just use the module feature of Angular. But you can import every module in every other module. So right now you can't enforce how your architecture should look like. Normally, in the front end as well as in the back end, you normally would do some architecture, how your application is structured. And normally you want to enforce some structure you defined, so you can't break your architecture that easily. NX brings in for that some features you can use to help you not accidentally import stuff from a module you shouldn't. So let's take a look at how that works. Workspace and tooling. Except the stuff like generation of libraries, services, components, which are usually under the hood, the features from the Angular CLI, which is just redistributed and enriched with some feature sets. There's more than one feature for the workspace itself. One thing you can, for example, do is you can tag your application. In the workspace itself, there's a JSON file, the annex.json file, which defines some information for the generated repositories inside of NX. And here, for example, you can set some tags. Tags later can be used to structure your application more than just with the module features of Angular. Here, for example, there are different types of tags. For example, the scope tag can be used to group your features. For example, scope check-in, scope booking, scope seat map. These are any tag you can use there to combine everything there on a logical area. You can type with a tag the type of the library. For example, is it a feature, a UI library, or for example, the data access library, and for which platform, like web, desktop, or mobile it is. The types itself aren't hard definited. You can write in everything you want. It's just a string. The areas with scope, type, platform are a convention which is be used often to structure it. After that, after you set that, you can now use external tooling, usually with NX. ESLint in the newest version is used. In the last version of Angular and NX, it was TSLint, which is now deprecated. So this is just the ESLint config file. The narwhal NX package brings in ESLint rule, which is called enforce module boundaries, which that you can start to structure your dependency constraints. Every time this constraint is broken, the linter will throw an error. And for example, VS Code will show those errors as well. If you try to import something you don't should be able to import, VS Code will display an error message with you shouldn't import that here because of rule XY. And it's easy checkable. For example, if you run the linter every time before you commit, or ideally it's automated through the tooling, like with packages like Husky, you can, every time you want to commit something, it's just checked in before if your boundaries are still intact. Yeah, like I said, VS Code is able to check that and just shows that kind of error. You're free how you want to structure your boundaries. Just about combining that rules, but usually if you take some time in the beginning, plan how you want to structure your application, it's much easier to keep your boundaries intact. Because if you work long time on an application or with a big team on the application, it's easy to enforce how the architecture of the application should look like, and not to discuss it every time on the merge request, for example. In my opinion, it's just it's a lot of easier of if new people come to the team, they don't have to ask too much how the architecture should look like. It's either they can just try to develop something, bring in their own ideas, and if they break the architecture, they will see, because the tooling says what they did wrong, and it's easy for them to recognize they did something which breaks the rules of that application. So where do I find everything here in this repository, for example? As you can see, or as we already talked about, the application and library structures are just folders with regular Angular libraries and regular Angular applications. And there are some meta information files, for example, the workspace JSON, or if you use the Angular CLI as a starting point, it's just the Angular JSON file, which you know from the normal, from a normal Angular repository. And for example, here is the ESLint JSON file, which just lives in the root of your repository. And you just have to, in the beginning of your application, or after you, for example, generated the empty modules you think you will need the next time, or every time you added a new module. You just have to structure in here how you want to structure your application. You can define the dependencies here, but every time you generate a new library or you generate a new application, you have to take a look if it's still working with that, or you don't. You have to look that you don't forget to add the corresponding tags to your libraries. For example, to set the scope or set the type. If you generate a library with the Angular CLI or the NX CLI, you can just, after the generate library with -- tags, add the tags you need. And that's all you need to enforce that boundaries on the libraries. Okay. The last thing which I will introduce for Form NX is like the schematics which the Angular CLI brings in. You can define your own schematics in that repository to enforce, for example, how complex structures are generated. It's really easy to generate an own schematic, and in that own schematic, for example, you can just call the Angular ones. For example, generate a library with different sub-libraries, or for example, complex structures for NGRX state management tooling, and you can define everything you need, or do you, how you want your application should be built with that. And they are just stored inside the repositories themselves. The schematics don't have to be distributed anywhere, and you can just call them. A small jump back to the first idea of developing the libraries with npm modules itself. You can every library you generated in the monorepo, you can just deploy as well if you want to. So everything you need to deploy to, for example, npm, because you want to use it in another project or in different applications which aren't inside of the repository, you can just do that as well. And so you can use everything of both worlds if you want to. The applications from your repository will just use the libraries from the repository, and every else application can import them from npm, for example. Okay, I talked a bit fast today, so I'm right now at the end of the presentation. I hope there was some new stuff for you, or something you want to think about if you structure your applications. And hopefully, Swami, hear me?
Yeah. Hey, Dominic. It's
Hey.
really good session. I like the idea of creating the shell and moving all the files related to the module, the view, its business logic, and the domain or the service layers, everything into one module kind of thing, so that when someone navigates to that particular module, uh, that will dynamically loaded, isn't it? It's like something like a lazy loading and
Um,
reorganization of the structure. Yes, please go ahead.
you can do lazy loading there as well, but normally or just after the generation, it's just like a regular Angular module, not lazy loaded itself. You have to
Okay,
define if you want to lazy load it.
okay. So when you divided these, the UI, the markup, and the business logic layer, and the data service layers, everything into one folder, and we
Mhm.
call that as a check-in process or different thing. So does that mean that you're creating a module file also there, or it's not? It's just only the organization of the files.
Usually both. Usually you have a module file inside of each library. For
Mm-hmm.
example, the well, let me show the folder. Um, Usually every sub library here, for example, the shell contains the booking shell module or the check-in data access module. So just this is just how every generated library starts, with a empty library with just the corresponding module in it.
Ah, okay, okay. So that's pretty good. And how did how do we differentiate? You spoke about two things. One thing is the shell, the app shell.
Mhm.
One is the app shell. One is the module specific shell. Or if
Yes.
I want to speak to you like a dashboard, when I come first navigate to any application, it will it will take me to a landing page or a dashboard, some kind of dashboard or landing page. So inside
Mhm.
this landing page, I have the top nav bar, the left nav bar, the landing page, and the footer. So in this, how do we make decision like A, B, C will go as part of the app shell, and C, D, E, F will go as part of the shared? How do we make the decision? Which one will go into the shell and which one will go into the shared folder?
Usually for that, I look at the mockup. Usually we have some mockups for the UIs, and
Hmm.
I take a look which components are, for example, on every page. So if it's on every page, it should be on the outer shells, and for example, the top nav just is on the desktop or mobile shell or the jump in point on that. And for example, a feature shell, like, I don't know, the check or the seat map shell, if there's a component to view the seat maps. Um, if it's don't an own application or don't have an own application which shows, for example, just the seat map, it usually just used inside the shell of the application itself. It shouldn't have the surrounding things like menus or navigations. So
Okay.
it depends hardly, or depends. Is the shell used in just in the application without anything around it, or is the
Mm,
shell used together with other shells, or it don't have to be a shell in every module. You can just have components and a data access layer and a UI layer. Not
mhm.
every area have to have a shell, just if it makes sense to have one.
Okay. Okay. So let me see. Do we have any queries? No, we do not have any queries, but this was a pretty good demo. I have learned many things on the organization perspective. The first screen, whatever you have shown, my demos will be in that folder structure itself. Okay, so it's all pretty good. So the thing is, thank you so much. It was really wonderful session. I have one final query. The demo which you have shown. Are
Mhm.
you sharing the GitHub link for that, or it is just
Right
do you have
now,
any?
it's just locally here, but I can create a GitHub link for that.
Oh yeah, if you can create a GitHub link and you can
Mhm.
post it in the meetup chat, or you can give it to me.
Mhm.
I can post it so that will be helpful for others who are viewing this demo. Whoever's
Mhm.
seen your tech talk,
Yes.
it will help them to understand how it runs. They will be able to execute it once they have the mock backend.
Mhm.
It will be easy for them
Okay.
to execute. And yeah.
I will commit it and send you a link. The repository itself, there's
Mm.
mostly no business logic in there. That's just the empty libraries to construct the structure itself. So
Organization.
there's
Yeah, yeah.
just,
That should be.
yes, just the organization. There's nothing to run. It's just the Hello World applications from the Angular CLI.
Oh, that should be pretty good. Seriously,
Mhm.
and people will know, and they'll take some inputs from this, and they will start implementing. I'm sure I myself will start um, creating these kind of folder structure for my March month demo for sure. I really liked it, so I will start implementing this folder structure. See how much I can go grab this concept and include in my demo.
Great.
That's good. Cool.
So thank you for having me.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate your time, and you have a good rest of the weekend, Dominic.
Thank you. You as well.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.
So, hey guys, thank you again. So we have the final session, and the final session is the Web API series, is which I'm discussing. This is the 3 of 15. So let me start sharing my screen, and we'll start. Okay, that's pretty good. So let me close this and open the project. Just give me 1 minute. Let me open the project and we'll start. So, what we are going to do today, and as every time we discuss, first let me navigate to the repository where we have this code. So, this is the session 3. So, the entire code will be available here in this repository. Let me paste it here, the source code repository, so you guys can go grab it. So this is the session 3 of 15. It's a series, and we slowly started developing the web API and started adding features one by one. And some of the concepts we'll just introduce and discuss one topic, and in the next episodes or next sessions, we'll come and add more and more details on that. So that's how we are taking this. So these are the software tools and prerequisites knowledge and assumptions. So this is the technology stack, and this is the information slide which I generally display. So the sessions will be purely hands-on, and we can have the parking lots. And if I'm unable to answer any question, I'll go back, do some reading, and I'll get back to you on the same channel. The, on the same channel where we are doing, you can post your queries here or in the YouTube video, wherever it is. I'll get back to you. So there are multiple ways to do things, and I'm doing one of the ways. And more, the focus is more towards the concepts, and demos are kept simple, but we will incrementally add. Okay. So one thing we will see, this is what we did it. Okay, let me close this. Okay, this is the demo. I have opened the wrong project. So this is the session 3. So we'll quickly see what did we do in the previous session, and we will start from there. Okay, if you see this, we have created a basic 3 layers: application core, data access layer, business logic layer, and we have created a simple controller, and we were able to get the data. We had only one method, get all, and also we had created a basic Angular Blazor application, and that Blazor application we were able to retrieve. That was done in the previous session. So in this session, what we are doing is what we'll be doing today. So about the action return types and the status code, we just discussed, and but we never got a little bit further than just discussion. Now this today we will go a little bit advanced in that. So we only saw 200 responses in the previous one. We did get all professors. We only saw 200. So now in today's session, we'll be replicating 404, 406, and 500. So we'll discuss what those are in a moment. And then we will see what format response data is and what is content negotiation. And next we will see that there's another beautiful tool, HTTP REPL, read, evaluate, print. This one. We will see that tool, how to do testing, and then we will retrieve a single resource. So already we have one controller, we'll add another controller to that. Creating SQL Azure, I will drop it. Actually, I thought of to showcase it, but when I added the content, I saw that it is becoming longer than what we can digest. So, I'll make it in the next session. Okay. So what we will do is we will integrate that web API with Blazor WASM. In the previous session, the Blazor WASM has got only one screen. As in the web API also, we have only one method. In this professors controller, we had get all. Similarly, in this Blazor WASM also, we had only the list. All the professors are getting displayed here. So that was the only thing which was there. So we will add to that integration we'll do, and also we'll integrate with Angular 11 application. So Angular 11 application is already developed one. So in the next session, what we will do is we'll do little bit of improvements. We will create this SQL server, and then we will create 2 more UIs. So at this point of time, we are using Angular application, but is fully developed. So we are not creating anything there. So in the next month, March 20 session, what we are going to do is we will create this Angular application and React.js. So we'll create both these applications, and then we do little bit of facelift to the existing web API, and also we will integrate with SQL Azure. So that is what is coming up in the next March 20th session. And let's quickly see what are we going to do. We are going to discuss about return HTTP not acceptable, and then the action return types which we have already seen, but we will touch it again. We're not going to discuss anything more, but we will again see that at a high level. And we'll discuss about this 406. How do you get 406 and what is 406? And we will format the response data. We'll add 2 of those methods. We'll see that, and we will see what content negotiation is. And then we'll test our web API using HTTP REPL. So we can test it using the Swagger or using the Postman, or now we added a new tool that is HTTP REPL. And we'll see that how we can go and test this web API using this REPL, HTTP REPL, and then we will start developing a new method which brings in a specific professor. So at this point of time, we have only get all professors. We'll add get professor by ID, so it goes and brings in one particular professor. and we'll see that how easy when we have this layers in place. It is very easy for us to add a new functionality to these existing libraries, or you can create a new functionalities also, but we have defined a clear set of rules, like if you want to support a new functionality, what are the things which we have to do. And these two things, as I was discussing, I will drop this from this demo because we have a lot of things to cover. And in the Blazor WASM, we will add a new thing. So if you compare with the previous demo, you can see that we have added a new information button. So when you click on that, it goes and displays the information of it's a view. Technically, it's a view button, view professor. So when you click on that I button, it comes to a separate page, and in this separate page we are displaying uh, the content of that particular professor in a textual manner. Technically this should be the text boxes which I have created in Angular, but lack of time I'm doing this simple one, but in the next episode I will do a facelift of this one also, right? And the next thing is we will develop I mean, we are not going to develop anything, we will just integrate it. We will develop this Angular application in the next month's session, where we will develop the Angular 11 as well as the React 17.x uh, versions, right? So that's what we are going to do. So the Angular UI looks like this, and this is what technically I thought of to replicate, but because lack of time, I could achieve only this one. But technically, the concept is same. So we will proceed towards that. But I'll do the facelift in the next session. Okay, without further delay, let's get going on this one. So the first thing what we will discuss is this item. Okay, at a high level, let's come and quickly see the action return types, which we have already touched upon, but let's do one more time. So controller action returns types in ASP.NET Core Web API. So ASP.NET Core offers the following options for Web API controller action return types. So something is specific type. So in the specific type here, we are telling that I'm going to return list of product or I enumerable of T. So if you can correlate this with the weather forecast here. If you see this weather forecast, it is I enumerable of weather forecast, which is pretty much I enumerable of T, this generic type. And also action result type, not only the specific type, the I action result type also. The I action result type is one which lot of things will come under this. Maybe we give the OK result or a bad request, not found, or an error. So a lot of things will come into this one. Okay, so we'll see that. And the next thing what we are going to discuss is um, where were we? Okay, let me come back over here. The next thing is HTTP return HTTP not acceptable. Okay, so let me quickly come in here and we will start developing one by one. So let me go to the project here and insert this web API. Okay, I'm here. So in this, so I do .NET run. Let it start, and we are using the same database, so it has started. So I'll come back to this Postman where I'm trying to bring all professors, and I go and click on this get all professors. It is displaying me this one. So now I go back to headers. At this point of time, let's hold on, but I will come and explain you what I'm doing here. I'm passing one accept header. So I'm telling that, could you please give me XML instead of JSON? Because there's a new requirement. I want to give XML. So At this point of time, it is not telling me anything, but it is giving me the content in the default formatter. Whatever we have is JSON, so it is giving me in JSON. So that what is happening is I don't know whether that web API is supporting it or not, this format. I will think that this is a bug or an error. I'm sending an XML, but it is giving me in JSON. So I will tell that, hey, this is a bug, or this something wrong is going on there. So what we have to do is for that to be there. So if client tries to negotiate the media type, whatever is not supported by the server, if you want to, it's better to throw 406 to tell the client that, okay, I'm not going to support that format or that type of content type which you are asking for. So to do that, what we have to do is we have to add this http return http not acceptable. Okay, that's what we have to send. So I'll come in here, let me copy this and come back to this. I will close this one, come back to startup. Here I've added, this. Okay, so once I add this, we didn't do anything. What we are telling is um, the flag which decides whether an http 406 not acceptable response will be returned if no formatters has been added. So okay, by default the formatter which was added is the JSON formatter. Okay, so by default, let's see if we are able to see that JSON formatter. Dependency injection. Okay, here, see this. So some of the formatters uh, add formatter mapping. So the default formatter which was added is JSON. So if we don't have any other formatters, it will throw this. If this particular kind of formatter or the content type, whatever is not configured, so it will throw an error. So we did this change, and let me go back here, and I'm executing this from console because it saves some time. I click on this button, it goes and executes. It is taking a long time, so I'm executing it from the console. So let's come back over here. Okay, see this. Now what happened is, let's go back and send this is as a JSON. Okay, and now I go and execute this. When I do send, it is making a request and it is giving. So now I want the XML type. So I said that I want application by XML. So is it same path? Okay, one second. What is this? Open in File Explorer. Okay, that's correct. It is one. So let me execute it from here. We did this. Right, let me execute it from here. And let me try text slash XML. Let me send this. Okay, it's starting the server. Okay, see, it says that 406 not acceptable. So if I say text by JSON, because we by default the formatter is JSON type, so it is giving me the JSON. So let me change this to application slash JSON. Okay, now I make a request, it is giving me 200 and it is giving me the content. Now I want to negotiate that. I'm asking to give me XML. So I hit it. So it doesn't give. Now it says this 406 acceptable. So by making this, what happens is any clients who's trying to integrate with us will clearly know that, okay, this is the format I'm expecting. And if that format is not being supported, if they really need it, they'll come to the table and explain us this is a new requirement, and the development team can support it. So if we don't write that, what happen is, if we just supporting only this JSON formatter default one, and the new format which they are asking, but still we give them the JSON, there might be a mismatch in their coding. They might have written coding for XML and we are sending them the JSON, and their UI will break, or UI or any system which is integrating with our API will break it. So it's better to write this. So that's the first thing. And also you can see here, um, at this point of time, it says that it only supports these three here in the Swagger. So similarly, if we do any of these things, it is going to give us an output. And if we do anything else, it will not. Okay. So that's first concept for today. We discussed it. Okay. So let's go and continue to the next topic. So the next topic is, okay. So the next topic is what we have to do. So we have seen 200 and 406. We didn't see 500. So let's do 500 now. 500, did I do it at the last? One second. No, I have to update this document. I will do that. I'm sorry. Huh? So next to send this 500. There are different thought process of handling this error handling. We'll come back. It's a big session. We'll do it on the error exceptions and error handling. But at this point of time, if I want to send 500, that means for any reason, and we have seen the layers, how the things goes. Here in Professor's controller, we have invoking the business logic layer, and inside this business logic layer, we are invoking the data access layer, and from this data access layer, we are using the SQL DB context. So it is coming in here. So let's assume there was some exception or error, or the network outage, or the database did not respond within the time, or database were offline for a fraction of second, and there was an exception here. So now what will happen is, if we handle exception here, again we might suppress or eat up the exception. We will definitely log into the application performance monitoring systems, and critical event also will log it. But what happens is, again, we might swallow that error. And some people, they will write error handling try catch block in data access layer, and try catch block in business logic layer, and try catch block in controller layer. So every time you write this try catch block, you're spending few milliseconds there to handle. So it might become costly. Imagine for some reason the database is down and 1,000 people are making requests in 1 second, and everyone lands up in this exception scenario. So we will eat up all the memory, and we might bring down the server. We never know that. So one of the thought process is, it is suggested to write this try catch block at the topmost level. That means if the data access layer throws an exception, it comes from that data access layer to business logic layer, and then it bubbles up to this controller layer. Okay, let's see that what happens, and how do we mitigate or mitigate this. Let's see that. So let's assume we will go and replicate a bug or an error scenario in we'll go and okay, so let me go and open a new instance. Let me go and open a new instance of this, and that's this one. Let me open up that particular folder. Okay, so I just did this complete sample and saved it, so we can go in a flow. So let's assume that I want to replicate a scenario. I'm simulating it. Okay, so I'll place a debugger over here, and let's place a debugger over here, and let's place a not in here. This should be in data access layer. I'm sorry. This should be in DAL here, right? This is the correct place. So that's what it is. So we have the debugger over here in the data access layer, and then it bubbles up. It should bubble up here, and then it should bubble up here. Okay, let's see how it goes. So let me start this, and let's invoke. Let's have this JSON. Did I switch it on? No, I switched it off. Okay, so it is coming in here. So I come back and I want all professors. I am making a request. So that comes in here to the business logic layer, and I go to data access layer. So data access layer, it went and brought all the professors, but we are simulating the error. So I throw this error. So then that gets bubbled up all the way, and it comes in as a unhandled exception, 500 internal server error, and it is giving me a lot of information which I don't need, and also some of the secrets are coming out, like what is my file name and on which line I failed it, and what is the complete path, and it is giving us all this information. It's pretty dangerous. Okay, so now let's uh, do some fix. So it should bubble up all the way till here. So let's come here and let's do try. And what we do is we'll come back over here. I will wrap this inside this try. And let me go to this web API to controllers. And then I just do a catch of exception. I mean, technically, we'll, as I was mentioning, we will write it into some kind of application monitoring system, and some people they will send out a message to the cell phone number also when there is an exception in production. So what we are doing is we are doing a try catch block here. We'll come back and discuss on that, but I just wanted to showcase the different status code for today. So 200, 406, 404, and 500. So now this is 500's turn. So let's place a debugger over here. So let's execute this. Now we understood that when it throws an exception in any layer, it start bubbling up, and it was not caught. Then it goes out as a uncaught exception, unhandled exception, which is pretty dangerous. It is throwing a lot of information. So what I'm doing is this again. I'm clicking in. It is coming to the business logic layer, and from business logic layer, it goes to the data access layer. It brings in the content, and this is where we are throwing the exception. So once the exception is thrown, it bubbles to the all the layers, and then it goes as unhandled exception. But we did a try catch block at the topmost level just because controller is one where we are returning the I action result. So just before that, we caught this exception. And here what we are sending is we are telling that hey, something has gone wrong, and we are giving the GUID. Generally we give the GUID, we log the information with that particular GUID. So when some customer, they'll come back to us saying that this was the GUID I saw when I did this transaction, then we go back to the logs, find out the context ID, and we know that what happened, how did the flow go. So here is pretty safe now. We are not throwing any exception. We are not telling that on which line and from which file it failed. we're not telling any information there. It went all the way from data access layer to business logic to controller. It was giving the line number and the file structure, everything, and the folder structure, everything it was giving. Now this is much better. We have to write it. So here we are giving 500 error. So one of the tip is whenever we are throwing an error, it is better to catch it or to do a try catch block at the topmost layer instead of doing it at every layer or the layer where you expect the things to go wrong. Okay, we might swallow that error, which might be dangerous for our health. So that's one more point we covered. So let me go back to here. So we covered 200, we covered 406, and we covered 500. Okay, we will come back to 400 when we are doing the get by ID. Okay, now we will see this format response data. So format response data, what is this format response data? So ASP.NET has this formatting the response data. So the response data can be formatted using specific formats or in response to the client request. So first we'll see this, how can we format our way, and then we'll format the data based on the client request, that is content negotiation. We'll see that in a moment. Okay, so format specific action result. Okay, sometimes what happen is we will the API endpoint and the action method, which will give the content in some type, no matter what kind of negotiation you do it, but it gives only that type. Okay, so we will see that information now. So if you see that, two of the things what we have planned here is we have planned to do these two action results. This one. Okay, I just wanted to add these two into the weather forecast controller. Here I'm adding it. Okay, I'm adding this. So first one is I'm sending the content result. So, and also second one is I'm sending I action result. So if you come and see about these two, action can return results that are formatted in a particular format regardless of client preference. Whatever client asks, I'm going to give this only. You ask me JSON, I'm going to give this. You ask me XML, I'm going to give this. Right? So we'll see that in a moment. So let me execute this. Let's see. So if you see this, here it says that what are the supported media types. We saw that text JSON or application JSON. So if you go to this one, and here it says that the supported type is application JSON or text JSON. But when we go to this about, we're not seeing the drop down. You see that? We're not seeing the drop down there. And if you go to the student, here also, you're not seeing the drop down. So let's try hitting it from the postman. So if I come to the postman, where I want the weather forecast. So weather forecast is returning the specific type. We have seen that IEnumerable. And now if I go and do an about, it is giving me the content type. So I come back over here and I'm asking application by JSON. It is giving this one. So it's not giving whatever the type which I'm asking. It is going to give the fixed type. See this. In this case, as we are sending the one specific response type, no matter what type you are asking, it is going to ignore that. But whereas in this kind of scenario, where we are asking for unsupported content type, so that's going to throw in 406, because we told that if at all we are going to give a content which is of the default formatter type, and we are going to negotiate asking for some other type which is not there in the formatter, at that time it will throw 406. But if you see here, it is a we have already formatted the response type. Here if you see that format response type, we are already saying that okay, I'm going to give you this content result type, I'm going to give you this string type. So that means I'm telling fixed type. No matter what you ask, the response, the header type, it should be in the accepted type. No matter what content type you are asking, I am going to give you this one content. And similarly, if you come and see this, the student, and in the student also, we are telling that I am going to give you the OK type. That's a object result type. So if I come in here, here also it is giving me this XML. Now I go and tell that accept application slash XML. That is the I action result type. The rules, whatever we defined, it is the content type. Now here it is specific. No matter what you ask, it's not going to. But here, as what is happening in this process, it will happen the same way. Suppose if I come back over here and make it JSON, all is well. So that's about the content response, format response data. So no matter what you ask, it will be fixed. And next thing what we do is content negotiation. So what does this content negotiation is? As I was mentioning earlier, when you are returning some kind of data and there might be a requirement, one client is good with JSON, or they're good with JSON and they are using the the TypeScript or a JavaScript version, Angular or React.js. They said that okay, we are fine with using the JSON content, and they went and integrated. Let's assume there are some other set of people who are working in PHP or some other language, and they are more comfortable in XML. And they say that okay, your API please support the XML also, and we want to support it because one company integrates with the JSON and another company integrates with the XML. All we do is we add this add XML data contract serializer formatters so that it will start supporting the XML output too. So let me go back over here and add this. Okay. Now let me come here. We'll see that the theory is here. So I just wanted to quickly show you one quick minute. So the content negotiation occurs when client specifies the acceptor. Okay. So the default content type is the default format type is JSON, and we can implement our own types also. And when the client asks for the particular type of content type, and if we are not supporting, we can throw 406 not acceptable. And browsers and content negotiation. So some of the times whatever the browsers request, we have to allow that. For that reason, will write that respect browser accepted header, and here in the content formatters we will add the XML type. So now that we have done that, and this is executing. Now what if I go to a browser for this get all processes? I go to a browser, do that. Oh, sorry. Let me, here you see this drop down list box. It clearly shows the supported types application JSON, text JSON, and you have application XML and text XML. That means now it allows us to do a content negotiation. So let it bring the data. Now I can go back here. See this? It is writing the accept header text by plain. Now I want it in application by XML. Okay. Now I do this. You see this? The same content is being written by the application, and here we are executing the curl. So if you want to try this, what we can do is we can copy this line from here till here and go back to any command line and execute it. You see the same output. Okay, suppose if I want to do a curl again and I want the text slash JSON. So it is giving me in the JSON format. So this is curl is one of the other testing tool which we can use it. So that's what we understood. And another thing is this is the navigation URL. What if I take this navigation URL and put it in the browser? So by default, because as we have seen that is the reason we are added this respect browser accept header. So that's what browser is accepting, requesting for this type. And what else I want to show? I want to show it from here. So here at this point of time, we are previously it says 406 not acceptable. Now it is giving me this, and now I can come back JSON. Okay, so now if I try to ask CSV, CSV, I want it to be the CSV type. Now it says that not acceptable because we have added by default we have JSON. On top of that we have added the XML. So these are the two types which the API gives. So you can negotiate whether you want JSON or whether you want XML. I'll give you. But if you ask any type which is not being supported here at that point of time, we will throw this 406 not acceptable. Or we can do the writing the custom formatters, but we will look into that in future session. So for today we will, I mean, as I was mentioning, we'll go to a topic, we'll learn that, we will park it, and again we'll go come back and revisit in the future session, and then we will do it. Okay. So the next thing what we will do is we will use this one HTTP REPL. Okay, in this HTTP REPL is like read evaluate print loop. Okay, so we have this in Python also. So if I go here and type Python, so we have this is the REPL. Okay, I will exit from this. That's also read evaluate print loop. So this is a nice tool which was developed. It's a lightweight cross platform command line tool. Okay, so I have already installed it yesterday. And how do we test it? So what is our base URL? So we can do that. I will come in here and do this. By default, when you do that, it comes to the read evaluate print loop. Okay, once we come here and you want to know something, what else I can do here? What else I can do here? We can type this help over here, or if you know the command, we can go ahead and verify the command itself. Okay, so if I do ls, so that gives me this what information is there. So we have the swagger information also. It is using that swagger information also. But if you see that when I do ls, it gives this. So a lot of these commands we can use this. I can do clear. Okay, some of these commands we can use it. And how do I test? So if I want to test this, I go ahead and so you see this. It is giving us the weather forecast information, and also we got weather forecast and about. So that is giving the, you can see the type it is returning. It is returning the application by JSON content type because we didn't set any accept type. But when we execute this, it is the content type. It's just purely string. We have seen that even though you negotiate, it's not going to give you anything. And one thing what we can do is we can set a header type, sorry, accept type. So I'm setting an accept type to XML. And again, I'll invoke this. No matter whether it is XML or anything, this is going to do a fixed one. And if I go back and do a weather forecast, see that previously it displayed in a beautiful JSON format. Now, because the content type, the header type, we told that set header accept type is application by JSON. Now it is giving me everything in JSON. So now what if I go and oh, we have seen this. Now what I have to do is I did weather. It is giving me XML. Now I go and I'm telling give me back the JSON. Again, if I go, now it is giving me JSON. So it all depends upon what type you are accepting content negotiation, and based on that, it is giving either the application JSON or application by XML. So that's pretty much this tool is. So this is one of the other topic. Now comes the new method which we want to implement. We want to retrieve a single resource. Now we will see that how easy it is to create a new functionality. Let me stop that. Just give me a moment. Let me have a glass of water. Okay. Now we discussed multiple times. When we want to implement new thing, we need to ensure that this interfaces has to be updated, and its concrete implementation should be there in the data access layer as well as business logic layer, and expose one more endpoint in the process controller. This is the rule. So see this how easy it is for us to develop. So let's start going into the application core. So into the application core, I want to support a new method which is called get professor by ID. So I'm coming in here and I'm writing a new method, and that method needs the guide, right? So we have added a new method, defined, declared a new method here in both the interfaces, in Professor Dal as well as Professor's business logic. So once we have defined this, what we have to do is we need to come to the data access layer and we need to implement that method. So I will come to the data access layer and I've implemented the method. So this method, it's not doing anything new. Simple, whatever the professor, whatever the professor ID which we send it, it goes and uses the DB context. It verifies, it is extracting the single record where the professor ID matches this professor ID from this professor's DB set, and including if he has got any students, do a first or default and configure await. It's all purely async programming, and that's it. Pretty much nothing else here. We are writing a couple log statements and returning this. And next thing is we need to go and implement the same in the business logic layer. So we'll come back to the business logic layer. The same, we write a log and we invoke the data access layer. Business logic layer is not doing anything new. It just as of today, it just receives the request and passes to the data access layer. That's it here. And once that is done, what we will do is we have to come back to the controller. And inside the controller, at this point of time, we have only one method, get, which is bringing in all the professors, get all professors. Now we are going to add a new method. The new method is this one, get professor by ID. This is a controller, and I'm going to add this over here. And let's quickly check what are we doing here. So we have the parameter which is ID, and we are taking that ID, we're taking it as a GUID. So that should be pretty much a strict type. It's is expecting the GUID, and we are returning a single professor. So we are invoking the business logic layer, and if the professor is null, we are sending 404. And if the professor is returned, we are sending 200 status. If some exception has happened, we are sending 500. So we have covered four status codes: 200 for success, 500 for exceptions, and if the record not found or a URL not found, for whatever not found, it is 404. And when the not acceptable type is 406, right? So first let's look into the positive side. So let me execute this. Application/JSON. I got the information. Okay. Now I'm going to view the record of Mithun Nair. I grab this guy's ID and paste it over here. So it is returning this because I have added as JSON. Sorry, XML. Now I add it as JSON. So again, the JSON is coming. Now you're seeing this response is 200. Now if it is this bad request, okay, why? Because this input is not a valid GUID, because here we have clearly told that input should be of GUID type. Okay, this is one more way to verify. And let's check that. Now we are seeing the 404. So we have seen few things. If the input itself is bad, we are receiving 400. So we saw couple of things. Anyways, I'm going to update this one. We saw 400, we saw 404, 406. Okay, these all types we have seen it. And if at all there is something which doesn't exist, it is going to return 404. And one thing what we can test is, I want to throw an error, simulate an error. I'll go here, and here again I am throwing error from the data access layer. Mostly the errors can happen at the data access layer, because that's the guy who's going and talking to the data store, and some other query is executing, or the database is online, or there was a network blip. Most of the times we face that problem over there. So this is, we saw, okay, we saw 500, the exception is coming. So we saw 500, we saw 200, we saw 400, we saw 404 and 406. So we saw all these five types of outputs, the status codes, HTTP status codes. I mean, when we started discussing on the first day, we just went through that. These are some of the status codes which we can expect, but we never discussed about anything. In the second session also, we never discussed about anything. In the third session, that's where we introduced five of the status codes, and we saw how to send those, right? So that's pretty much, and I think we can go to the next phase. So we saw that everything, and creating this one, SQL, Azure, and local web API. That's the next session. I will mark it here so that I will know that this was done. And HTTP REPL. After HTTP REPL, we discussed about status code 500, isn't it? Here we discussed about status code 500. Exception scenario. Okay, exception scenario in data access layer. Right, so we did that. And next thing we have seen that this is also done. This is for session 4. I'm parking it so that I know that we have moved these two items for session 4. So I'll prepare that, because right now it is 45, since 50 minutes we are discussing, still we have two more topics. So I felt that this will be too much of thing, we might not be able to digest it, or we might lose the focus. Now pretty much we discussed about the HTTP not acceptable type, the 500 status code, and format response data, content negotiation, HTTP REPL, and retrieving the single resource. Everything is pretty much done. So those two topics, I will move that to next session, right? So that one I will drop it at the end, so that uh, and I will. This is session 4. This also I'm marking it as session 4. Right. So we have completely documented like what we are discussing now, what we are pushing it to session 4. And next phase is we have to work on this one. Right. So I do a facelift. Just give me some time. By next month session, I will do a facelift of this one also. I will make it pretty much equivalent to this. Okay. If not exact, at least a little bit equivalent to this format. Okay. Let's work on this. Now what I will do is, now that we have fully, what did I do? Did I close it? Ow. I'm sorry. I didn't realize that. And if you want to come out, you just do an exit. Come out of the triple. Okay. So now that we have everything, so I will save it little later. Let it be here. By the end of the session, I'll do one check-in, so that you will have all the entire coding here. As I was mentioning, this is the repository where you'll have the entire coding. So let's go and develop this one. And now what we are doing is, let's close this and this and this. Let's go back to Blazor WASM. So the first thing is, let's execute what is there. I will execute this web API. And once I execute this web API, let's go and see this Blazor WASM app, what we have developed in the session 2. It's all incremental. We are incrementally developing and adding new things. I mean, I'm not discussing anything on the authentication or the security and all those things, because we have still 12 more sessions to go. So later on we'll add the deployment to Azure and CI/CD pipeline, microservices. Lot to come, but we will take baby steps before reaching there. Okay, so here you can see, this is an application which we developed in the previous one. When I do fetch, it is going and bringing in the content, and see this, the path, it is bringing in the 502. That's the one. And when I go here, so what it is doing is, it is going and bringing in from 5001, because the 5001 port is for the web API, and 5000 port is for this one. So when we go to fetch data, we are bringing in from 5002. When we go, that means it is internal. We are accessing a JSON content. But when we go to web API, now this is going outside the Blazor application, talking to a web API and bringing in the content. So that's what we have to make a note. That we did that. Now the next thing what we will do is we will come to the pages and we need to do a small facelifting. Okay, before that we have to go to this one, right mouse click on the CSS and add client side library. Okay, in this client side library, font awesome, we're adding this font awesome. Okay, so we added this font awesome, so let's spend 1 minute time on this font awesome. If you go to this font awesome and you can come in here, and there are a lot of examples of this font awesome. So you can come in over here and search for college or whatever, whatever the icons which you want. So I want to search for this one, college or any icon. So let's look into this. So if you click on that, so it shows this icon here. And if I want anything, just you have to use this one, Fab, FA, Aquasoft, or these kind of things. So, or else what is the version it is installing? We can go and check that. CSS and web forms. So we have all this here. So you can see this FA, FAS, FAR, FL, all these fab. So you can see this whether it is a large items, you want to have a large icon or a small icon, 8x or 1x, 2x or small or extra small. All these things they have given. I mean, we need to spend some time to know more about this. If I want to come back here, font college icon, font awesome, college icon. See this, here this font awesome. This is the college icon. So all we have to do is FA hyphen university. So this is what we need to do that. So after doing that, there are a couple of other things which we have to do. You can see the version, what version it is installing. It will be here in the libman. And the next thing what we have to do is we need to get into this pages. Sorry, it's not in pages, it's in index file. Where is that? Why I'm not able to see it? Okay, here. Right. If I come back to this one index, we need to do some changes here. Let's do that. So I go to www and inside the index, all I have to do is add this style sheets here. Okay, that's one thing. And the second piece is we have to add the script also at the bottom. Always the JS is at the bottom, CSS is at the top. After doing that, what we have to do is we need to come back over here and add a new column. So let me go to the pages, and here we have an empty column or actions or whatever it is, because I just kept it empty. We'll start improvising. This is just a we have started improvising, isn't it? So it takes a little bit time. So we do a new row for every record. We are saying that whenever I click on this information cycle icon, I need to go to professor details and professor ID. The professor ID is a GUID, right? So that's what one improvement which we did it. So let's go and see, are we able to see the icon or not? If it is not, then we have to spend some time to find out why it is not. And if it is displaying, then it is well and good. We are the happiest people on this face of earth if it displays for the first shot. Okay, now come in here and sometimes it doesn't. Okay, now it shows this. Okay, you can see this when I click on this, it comes to a page. The page doesn't exist. We didn't create it now, but the we have the UI, so it's loading the. Okay, it's loading this. Let me stop it and let me execute it. Sometimes what happens is because of that exception, it gets stuck somewhere. So it's better to restart it just to save the time, because if we start going and investigating, takes some time. And I'm clicking on this. It is bringing in this data. I'm coming in here. I'm coming back to this. Everything is working good. And here, if we click, we know that we don't have the page. So that's the first phase. And let me close all these things. And the second phase is we have to create a new razor component. And let's create that new razor component. That's for the professor details. So I'm taking this name. I do right mouse click on this and add a razor component. And to that razor component, I am adding this professor details. Okay, and then I want to add the C# file for the same. So I will create a new class file and create it with the same name and mark it as partial. If not, it will shout at us. Okay, now that we have this markup, I will quickly come. It's all now. The key point is how do you do, right? So this is the professor detail. I am copying it here. This is the route professor details / professor ID. The same thing we are specifying here. Here also we are specifying professor details / professor ID. Okay. So we have the professor details, and here is the link to navigate back. We are saying that use professor from web API because that is the route for this. And after doing that, what we will do is we will go back to the code behind, and here in this code behind there is a pretty small thing, nothing big. We are having that HTTP client. We know that it gets injected here. It gets injected here. And for today, we will do a hard coded one, and then later we'll revisit, and later we'll revisit with this app configuration localhost colon 5001, right? So that's pretty much over here. And in this also we did this, whatever this one for today. Let's hold on with this hard coded information. In the next in the next episode, what we will do is we will read it from the app settings.json file. Okay, that's pretty much. So what we are doing is, this is, we know that, and this is the parameter we have to declare it. So whatever the parameter which we are expecting here, that we are telling that that should be the parameter type. And professor detail is an object which we initialized here, and we are deserializing when we get this get method. When we return this method, we are deserializing to professor type, and we are assigning it. And here in this razor page, what we are doing is we are displaying it in this format. So let's try whether this is going to work or whether it is going to fail. So for some reason, we are leaving the hard-coded information for this month. We'll come back in the next session. We'll improvise it. That's what we are doing from starting. We do something and again come back, revisit, and we update it. Okay. So when I'm coming to fetch data, it's making a call, and there are no errors in the console. Okay. And when I go to professors, get all professors, there are no errors in the console and we are getting it. And when I click on this professor, so it is coming and it is displaying this information, but the structure is little bad, that we are going to fix it. Come into this, come to this one, and there is one class which I forgot. Let me bring in that class, and let me bring in that. I'm dropping it over here, and let's give that a shot again. Right mouse click. Okay, so it's somewhat okay. It's not a beautiful thing, but it's okay. We can survive. So there are no console errors and there's no errors here also. So I can navigate back. Now I verify Manish Agarwal's, and then I go to Mithun Nair, and then we go to Scott Rudy. We go to the Scott Rudy's record. We go to the Scott Rudy's record. Okay, so it's bringing in. So we did this Blazor application integration. So this works pretty good. And another thing, what we will verify for today is the final integration. That is the this is what we have seen. This one and this one we have seen it, and we will see this one. I mean, next month when we are meeting in our next session, we will create this Angular and React. We'll create two SPA applications from scratch, because at least we have a Blazor to a decent extent. We have a list all and get by ID, and we do the same functionality for we do the same functionality for React as well as Angular 11. We'll create it from scratch, and we'll do a little bit of facelift for the Blazor WASM application also. Okay, now that we have everything, so let me come back over here and cd source. Okay, now what is happening here, I'll show you. We'll not discuss anything. We'll first do an integration and see how things works, and then in next month episode, when we are doing the fourth session of this, we will go into deep, and we'll create everything from scratch. How we developed a web API, we don't have everything, we'll create it from scratch. Similarly, we'll do this one also. One thing what we have to do is we have to and specify the endpoint here. There are multiple ways. This is one of the way I know how to do, so I'm specifying that. And we have a services folder. And one more improvement what we do in the Blazor is, at this point of time, each and every razor page is going and talking to the endpoint. If there is let's assume that the same endpoint method has been called from two different razor pages, and there is a change, maybe we are adding a parameter, or the something has changed, maybe the version 2 we have to call. So I have to go and find out this particular two lines of code in all those Blazor components where I'm using it. I need to go and modify. Instead, what we will be doing is we will adding a service layer and move this logic to that service layer, and from this razor component we'll use the service layer. Similarly, what is happening here in this Angular, we have the view over here, but the service layer is the one which goes and talks to the backend. So if you see, this is the service layer. So we'll do the similar thing in next month's Angular. So here you can see that we are bringing in that environment, and environment.web API URL. That's the base web API URL. Okay, I'm starting this. So for today's episode, we will use it as it is. It's fully developed one. We'll come back and do a little bit of facelift of this. We'll see. Let it run. Um, let's wait. I'll check in the code, guys. After this demo, I will check in the code. It's taking some time, but it's going to compile and give us. Okay, this we know that it already works. So let's hold for some time. Sometimes this will take longer than. For some reason, sometimes it takes longer than it should take. Let's wait. In the meanwhile, we can go and check that we did not break anything. Come into fetch data. So no console errors. I bring in get all professors. No console errors. Go to a particular professor. There's no errors. I will navigate back to this. No errors. Okay, that's good. And I think it is taking a little bit longer. I don't know why, but let's give it some time. Let it take its own time. Yeah. So it's let's not pressurize that. So it's going to build browser application bundles. It's doing a bundling. Let's give that couple minutes. Should be good enough. Wow. Okay. So we have this dashboard, and again I'll open here. When I click on this browser, it's going and invoking this same API endpoint, whatever this is invoking, the same API endpoint we are invoking. And when I do edit, it goes and invokes this method, get professor by ID. So you see that. And when I also you can see that it is making the same get professor by ID. So if you have a backend and we have integrated with two SPA. Okay, one is Blazor, a single page application, and Angular is single page application. We have one backend system, and we were able to integrate it with two. We'll do a facelift of this and the other application, and that's it from my side for today's session. Hope you guys have learned something new and enjoyed this session. So we will do more, continue our journey in this stuff with the fifth session. Sorry, fourth session. Today was the third session, so we'll continue with the fifth session next month. That's on March 20th. Let me share my screen for one more minute to show you that. So here in this one, so we have one event on 6th March, half day of Azure, and Microsoft Ignite local event, and March 20. So this is where I'm going to create Angular as well as React and integrate it. Only two pages. We have the dashboard, and we'll have get all and get by ID. So we'll focus only on that piece. So that itself will take 30 minutes, a decent 30 minutes. We'll focus any time left over. We'll spend time on doing a facelift, or we can take it in the fifth session. So thank you so much, guys, for spending your time on the weekend. And you guys have a good weekend. Thank you.